A closed door marked the end of a lifetime of sacrifices, the cold rejection a betrayal so profound it shattered the illusion of family. Who knew the architect of their downfall was the very woman they cast out? I stood there frozen, my heavy suitcase still clutched in my trembling hand as the mahogany door, adorned with a cheerful Christmas wreath, closed slowly in my face. The festive red bow swayed mockingly in the December breeze, a stark contrast to the cold rejection I had just received. My daughter-in-law doesn't want strangers at Christmas dinner. My son's words hung in the frosty air between us. Strangers. After carrying him for 9 months, after 38 hours of excruciating labor, after 67 years of being his mother, I was a stranger. My name is Eleanor Vance, and I had just flown across the country from Boston to San Diego because my son, Ethan, had finally called after 3 years of painful, inexplicable silence. "We'll see you at Christmas, Mom," he had promised 4 weeks ago, his voice bright with what I had desperately wanted to believe was genuine excitement. For weeks, I had lived on that promise, marking off days on my ornate calendar, shopping for thoughtful gifts for my grandchildren, Clara and Leo, whose faces I knew only from rare social media photos I had managed to glimpse via a carefully crafted burner account. The airport had been absolute chaos, a 5-hour delay due to unpredictable winter storms. I'd sat there ramrod straight, clutching my vintage leather purse, refusing to leave my seat even to use the restroom, terrified of missing an announcement. No food, just weak, lukewarm coffee and a surging, foolish anticipation. When we finally boarded at 9 o'clock in the evening, I couldn't sleep a wink, imagining the reunion, rehearsing what I'd say, how I wouldn't cry, how I'd be perfect and pleasant and, above all, not say anything that might upset Victoria, my meticulous daughter-in-law, Victoria. From the moment Ethan had introduced us 10 years ago, I'd seen something calculating behind those perfectly made-up glacial eyes. She was always immaculate, always watching, subtly measuring everything and everyone for their precise value to her carefully constructed social framework. After the wedding, the calls from Ethan grew less frequent, then stopped altogether. Christmas cards, carefully selected and beautifully addressed, were returned unopened. Birthday messages for the children were left unanswered. But this year was different. This year, he had called. This year, I had believed. The taxi had dropped me off at 11:43 p.m. I remember checking my antique gold watch, thinking it was late, but they would surely be waiting up. The porch light was on. Through the window, I could see their magnificent Christmas tree glittering with custom-made ornaments that probably cost more than my entire monthly pension, the pension I pretended to live on. Soft music played inside. Silent night. Oh, the bitter, agonizing irony. I had barely pressed the doorbell when it swung open. Ethan stood there, not with open arms, but with a stricken, uncomfortable look. Behind him, Victoria stood with arms crossed, her lips tight, wearing what looked like an expensive, shimmering cocktail dress as if they had been entertaining real guests, not strangers like me. "Mom," he had said, shifting his weight uncomfortably on the welcome mat. "You're late. We weren't sure you were coming anymore." "The storm," I began, my voice thick with exhaustion and emotion, but Victoria cut me off with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "We've already had dinner." "The children are in bed." Her voice was ice, sharp enough to cut through lead. I nodded, forcing a smile that felt brittle and painful. "That's okay. I'm just happy to be here." Then Ethan looked back at Victoria, who gave him the slightest, almost imperceptible nod, a signal I recognized immediately. A puppeteer pulling an invisible string, he turned back to me, his face a mask I couldn't read. My son, yet not my son. "Look, Mom, there's been a misunderstanding. We were expecting you for dinner, not to stay. Victoria doesn't want strangers at our family Christmas." I felt my heart crack into 1,000 irreparable pieces, but I held my face still, a lifetime of corporate discipline keeping the mask in place. "Ethan," I whispered, the name catching in my throat. "I'm your mother." "It's been 3 years, Mom," he said, as if that simple fact explained everything. "Things change. People change. Then the door closed just like that. No goodbye, no sorry, no Merry Christmas. I stood there, a light cold snow beginning to dust my wool coat, wondering what I had done to deserve this, what terrible, unforgivable crime I had committed as a mother that warranted such cruelty. The memory of Ethan as a little boy flashed through my mind, how he used to run to me with treasures he'd found, how I'd worked 3 silent jobs after his father. Robert died to ensure he had everything he needed, how I'd sat up for countless nights helping him with college applications. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of Victoria's triumphant, sharp smile as she turned away. But just before she disappeared from view, I saw something else. She was looking down at a large, glossy magazine open to a page featuring Stonehaven Manor, that magnificent historical mansion on the hill that the true elite of San Diego coveted so desperately. The one Victoria had mentioned in the few conversations we'd had, her eyes gleaming with cold, hard ambition. "Whoever owns that house owns this town," she'd once said with utter conviction. If only she knew, I thought bitterly, a cold rage beginning to supplant the grief. I don't know how long I stood there, my unshed tears turning cold on my cheeks, but eventually the corporate mask returned. I set my suitcase down and took out the elegant pen and the small leather-bound notepad I always carry. My hands shook as I wrote, but my mind was suddenly crystalline clear. Sometimes, when you have nothing left to lose, the truth flows easily, powerfully, and with devastating consequence. When I finished, I folded the note carefully and walked to their elaborate mailbox, which was shaped like a miniature colonial house. I slipped the note inside, picked up my suitcase, and called another taxi. 3 days later, as I sat in my small but fiercely elegant apartment back in Boston, my phone began to ring, then ring again and again. Text messages flooded in. Voicemails filled up rapidly. I watched the phone vibrate across my antique mahogany writing desk, the desk where I'd signed the final papers just last month. Papers that would change everything. I let it ring because sometimes silence speaks louder than any desperate word. And sometimes, the most devastating weapon isn't revenge or anger or even millions of dollars. It's truth. For 3 days, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Ethan's name flashed on the screen so often I considered blocking him just to reclaim the cold, lonely peace he had forced upon me. 47 calls, 63 text messages, each one more desperate, more panicked than the last. "Mom, please call me. We need to talk." "What did you mean in your note?" "Mom, this is serious." "Please, Mom, I'm begging you." I watched the snow fall outside my window, a quiet storm mirroring the chaos I had unleashed. Remembering how Ethan used to build snowmen with me, his little hands red with cold, but his face alight with pure, innocent joy. That child was gone now, replaced by a man who called his mother a stranger. On the 4th day, at precisely 9 o'clock in the morning, I finally answered. "Eleanor Vance speaking." My voice was steady, practiced, the calm, controlled voice I'd used in international boardrooms for decades before my supposed retirement. "Mom." Ethan sounded breathless, as if he had been running a marathon. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. Have you?" I kept my tone light, effortlessly conversational. "I've been rather busy, dear. Holiday preparations, you know." "Mom, your note. Is it true, all of it?" I smiled to myself, though there was no joy in the gesture, only the painful satisfaction of a strategy executed perfectly. "Every single word, Ethan." The silence stretched between us, heavy with the weight of devastating revelations. "You own Stonehaven Manor?" His voice was barely above a whisper, laced with disbelief. "The one Victoria has been trying to get us invited to for years? The one that never goes on the market?" "I purchased it through my holding company, Vance Acquisitions, in 1987, I said simply, allowing the fact to settle. "Your father, Robert, and I had planned to retire there. After he died, I couldn't bear to live in it, but I couldn't sell it either. Sentimental value, I suppose, and the trust fund? $12 million? Your grandfather was a prudent man," I continued, pressing the advantage. "He set it up to mature on your 48th birthday. That's next month, isn't it? January 15th. I heard what sounded unmistakably like a glass breaking sharply in the background. "Is Victoria listening?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yes," Ethan admitted, his voice tight. "You're on speaker." "Hello, Victoria," I said pleasantly. "I assume you've read my note." Her voice came through, tight and controlled, but I could hear the raw, barely contained rage simmering beneath the polished veneer. "Martha, Eleanor," she corrected quickly. "There's clearly been a misunderstanding. Ethan and I would love for you to come back and spend Christmas with us. The children have been asking about their grandmother." I nearly laughed aloud at the audacious, clumsy lie. Children who had never met me asking about me? The falsehood was so transparent it was almost insulting to my intelligence. "That's very kind," I replied, my tone neutral. "But I'm afraid I have other plans." "What other plans?" Ethan asked, desperation replacing his earlier shock. "Mom, please. We need to talk about this face to face." "About what exactly, Ethan? About how you let your wife call me a stranger? Or about how she's been systematically sabotaging your career at Sterling Partners to keep you financially dependent on her father's meager connections?" Another silence descended, heavier than the first. "What are you talking about?" His voice had changed instantly, confusion and a trace of fear replacing the desperation. "The promotion at Sterling Partners last spring. The one you were passed over for. Did you know you were actually the board's first choice? Did you know Victoria met privately with George Sterling and convinced him you weren't ready?" I paused, letting the bomb drop. "I have the recording, Ethan. Would you like to hear it?" I heard frantic movement, muffled voices, and the distinct sound of a door being slammed shut. When Ethan spoke again, Victoria was clearly no longer in the room. "Mom, this can't be true. Victoria wouldn't do that. Just like she wouldn't intercept my letters, my birthday cards to Clara and Leo. The Christmas presents I sent every year." I kept my voice gentle. "This wasn't about hurting my son. It was about opening his eyes," she said. "She said you never sent anything." "I have the tracking confirmations, Ethan. Everything was delivered and signed for." I paused for maximum effect. "By Victoria." His breathing had grown ragged. I could picture him running his hand through his perfectly styled hair, the way he always did when distressed. "Why are you telling me this now? After all this time?" The question struck me like a physical blow. "Why now, indeed?" I whispered, the maternal pain resurfacing. "Because I'd been a coward. Because I'd been afraid of losing you completely. Because—" I paused, gathering my strength. "I believed that one day you would remember who you were. Who we were. I kept hoping, Ethan, until 3 nights ago when you closed that door. Mom, His voice broke completely. "I'm so sorry. I'm not looking for apologies, Ethan. But I am the trustee of your grandfather's estate. I have certain responsibilities. The terms are clear. The beneficiary must demonstrate sound financial judgment. If I determine that the money would be subject to undue influence or mismanagement by a spouse, for example, I have the power to redirect the $12 million to charitable causes." "You wouldn't do that," he said. But uncertainty and raw panic colored his words. "Wouldn't I? 3 days ago you called me a stranger. Why would a stranger leave you millions of dollars?" The truth hung between us, sharp, undeniable, and devastating. "What do you want me to do?" he finally asked, his voice defeated. "That's entirely up to you, Ethan. But know this. I have a meeting with my lawyers on December 26th, the day after Christmas. Whatever decisions you make between now and then will determine my decisions thereafter." "You're blackmailing me." Hurt and disbelief warred in his voice. "I'm giving you a choice," I corrected gently, "which is more than you gave me when you shut that door." I heard a commotion in the background, Victoria's voice growing louder, demanding to know what I was saying. "I should go," Ethan said hurriedly. "Yes, you should," I agreed. "You have a lot to think about." "Oh, and Ethan," I added just before he hung up, "the passcode to the secure email account mentioned in my note is your birth date. Everything is there. The recordings, the documents, the proof, all of it. The truth doesn't ask to be believed. It only asks to be seen." After I hung up, I sat motionless, staring at the phone. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the photograph on my desk. Ethan at his college graduation, beaming with pride, his arm around my shoulders. The last time I truly recognized my son, the door to my apartment opened and Beatrice, my oldest and most trusted friend, stepped in with grocery bags. "You finally talked to him?" she asked, setting the bags down. I nodded, unable to speak. "And?" she prompted, sitting beside me, her eyes full of concern. "And now we wait," I whispered, "to see if my son still exists inside the man Victoria created." Beatrice squeezed my hand, her eyes fierce. "He does, Eleanor. He's in there. And you just threw a nuclear grenade into the fortress keeping him prisoner." That night I dreamed of Stonehaven Manor, its sweeping staircases, its spectacular garden views, the life I might have had there with Robert, the Christmases we might have shared with our son and his children, dreams of what never was, what might yet be. My phone pinged at 3:17 a.m., a single text from Ethan. I opened the email. "We need to talk. I'm coming to Boston." The Boston winter welcomed Ethan with a swirling, furious blizzard. His flight was nearly diverted, but somehow he made it. I watched from my window as the taxi pulled up, as my son stepped out into the swirling snow, looking up at my modest brick building in Back Bay with uncertainty and exhaustion written across his entire face. I'd chosen this apartment specifically for its unassuming exterior, a modest brick facade. Nothing that would suggest its resident might control millions in assets. Nothing that would hint that apartment 4B housed the anonymous owner of Stonehaven Manor. The crown jewel of San Diego real estate, the buzzer rang. I pressed the intercom. "Fourth floor," I said simply, then released the door lock. Those 3 minutes it took him to climb the stairs were an eternity. I smoothed my cardigan, touched my silver hair, wondering if he would see the changes time had etched into my face, or if he would see only the stranger Victoria had convinced him I was. The knock, when it came, was hesitant. 3 soft, uncertain taps. I opened the door to find my son looking more haggard than I'd ever seen him. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His usually immaculate hair was disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. He'd lost noticeable weight since Christmas Eve. "Mom," he said, and the single word seemed to catch painfully in his throat. "Ethan," I responded, stepping aside. "Come in, you must be frozen." He entered slowly, his eyes taking in my home, a place he'd never visited. His gaze lingered on the photographs arranged on the bookshelf, most of him at various ages. The hockey trophies he'd won in high school, the framed article about his first job at Sterling Partners. "You've been following my career," he said quietly, a mix of accusation and awe in his voice. "Did you think I wouldn't?" I gestured to the sofa. "Sit, please. You look exhausted." He sank down, dropping his head into his hands. "I don't even know where to begin." I settled in the armchair across from him, folding my hands in my lap. "The beginning is usually a good place." He looked up, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the little boy who used to come to me with scraped knees and broken toys, trusting me to fix everything. "The recordings," he said, the word heavy with disbelief. "Victoria, she really did all those things? She told George Sterling I wasn't ready for the promotion? She intercepted your letters, your gifts? Yes? She's been lying to me for our entire marriage?" "I believe so. Yes." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window, restless with newly discovered rage. "Why didn't you tell me years ago when it started happening? Why didn't you fight harder to reach me?" The question pierced me like a shard of ice. I had asked myself the same thing countless sleepless times. "At first I didn't know," I admitted honestly. "I thought perhaps you were busy building your new life. Then I suspected, but I had no concrete proof. By the time I obtained the evidence, you seemed happy, Ethan, or at least I convinced myself you were happy." He gave a bitter, short laugh. "Do you know what my life has been like? The constant, suffocating pressure from Victoria to climb the social ladder, to make more money, to get invited to the right parties, the way she criticizes everything I do, everything I am." "No," I said softly. "I don't know." "Because you shut me out." He flinched as if I'd slapped him across the face. She made it sound so reasonable. She said you were controlling, that you disapproved of her, that you were trying to manipulate me. And I believed her because it was easier than admitting I'd made a catastrophic mistake. He turned to face me fully. Stonehaven Manor, the trust fund. Mom, who are you? Really? I smiled faintly, a genuine, powerful smile. I'm exactly who I've always been, Ethan. Your father and I were simply more successful than we let on. We wanted you to develop your own work ethic, your own path. The trust from your grandfather was meant to give you freedom later in life, not to define you. And Stonehaven Manor, the house Victoria's been obsessed with since we moved to San Diego, was an investment. Your father had a good eye for property. I paused. Victoria's been trying to get invited there, I understand. Ethan sank back onto the sofa. It's all she talks about. The historic holiday party they host every year, the social connections. If we could just get our foot in that door, she always says. He looked up suddenly, a flicker of comprehension in his eyes. The irony is that I have the only key. I finished quietly. A moment of profound silence stretched between us, and then unexpectedly Ethan began to laugh. It started as a low chuckle and grew until tears streamed down his face. Whether from mirth or pain, I couldn't tell. All this time, he gasped between breaths, she's been chasing approval from society. And my own mother, the woman she's been poisoning me against, holds the keys to the kingdom she's desperate to enter. I waited patiently for his laughter to subside. Ethan, why did you come here? He sobered instantly. She doesn't know I'm here. I told her I had a business trip to New York. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. After I saw the emails, the recordings, I started watching her more carefully, checking things she told me, finding inconsistencies. And last night, I found a burner phone in her desk drawer. She's been texting someone, a man, Julian Marsh, planning meetings. My heart sank with a familiar, cold resignation. I'm sorry, Ethan. Don't be. His voice hardened with resolve. It confirms everything you've been saying. Everything I was too blind and weak to see. He reached for the heavy briefcase he'd brought, opening it to remove a thick folder. I found these. Financial records. She's been moving money from our joint accounts into a private one. Small amounts, but over years. Nearly $100,000. I knew about this too, I said quietly. His head snapped up. You knew about this too? I've had people keeping an eye on your finances for the trust fund evaluation. People? What people? I hesitated, then decided complete honesty was the only path forward. I'm on the board of Sterling Partners, Ethan, anonymously through a holding company. His face went slack with utter shock. What? That's not possible. I would know, would you? How often do you interact with the board? The actual anonymous board, not just the executive team? Almost never, he admitted weakly. The board members are reclusive, private by design, I said, rising to walk to my desk. We prefer to evaluate talent from a distance. We? His eyes narrowed, trying to put the impossible pieces together. Mom, what exactly are you telling me? I unlocked the bottom drawer. From it, I withdrew a leather portfolio embossed with the Sterling Partners logo. I handed it to him. Your father didn't just work for Sterling, I said, watching his face closely. He founded it with George Sterling. When he died, I inherited his shares. I've been a silent majority partner ever since. Ethan opened the portfolio with trembling hands, scanning the documents inside. Stock certificates, board meeting minutes, investment reports. His name appeared repeatedly in talent evaluations, each one glowing with praise. You've been watching my entire career, he whispered, a mixture of awe and resentment. Not controlling it, I corrected gently, kneeling beside him. Watching. There's a difference. Does Victoria know any of this? I don't believe so. Though she clearly suspects there's money somewhere, hence her intense interest in your promotion and Stonehaven Manor. He closed the portfolio slowly. What happens now? That depends on you, Ethan. On me? He looked confused. You're the one holding all the cards. I shook my head. No, I'm holding information. Truth. What you do with it is your choice. He was silent for a long, agonizing moment, staring at his hands. When he looked up, his eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in years. "I want my life back," he said firmly. "My real life, not this performance Victoria's orchestrated. I want my mother back. I want my children to know their grandmother." My heart swelled, but I kept my voice steady. "And Victoria?" His jaw tightened, the resolve hardening his features. "I need to confront her with everything. And then—" He took a deep, shuddering breath. "And then I need a very good divorce attorney." I nodded, finally allowing myself to feel the first fragile tendrils of hope. "I can help with that. I know a few excellent firms." "I know you can," he said, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "You've been helping me all along, haven't you? Even when I shut you out." "That's what mothers do, Ethan." He reached across the space between us, taking my hand in his. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Probably not," I agreed, squeezing his fingers. "But you have it anyway." As the snow continued to fall outside, casting my apartment in a soft, diffused light, Ethan began to tell me about my grandchildren. Clara, age 7, who loved to read just like her father had. Leo, age 5, who could already solve complex 500-piece puzzles. Children I'd never met but had sent birthday gifts to every year. Gifts Victoria had hidden away, denying them knowledge of me. "They'll love you," Ethan said confidently. "Once they're free from Victoria's influence, they'll love you." I didn't tell him how those words broke and healed my heart simultaneously. I didn't tell him about the silent, lonely nights I'd cried myself to sleep, wondering if I'd ever hear my grandchildren's voices, wondering if I'd ever be a part of their world. Instead, I simply said, "I'd like that very much." As evening approached, Ethan looked at his watch reluctantly. "I have to go. My flight back is in 3 hours. So soon? I need to do this right, Mom, for the kids. I can't just disappear. I need to gather more evidence, legal protection." His expression grew determined. "But I'm coming back. We all are. For Christmas. The real Christmas we should have had." As I walked him to the door, he turned suddenly and pulled me into a fierce, desperate embrace. "I'm so sorry," he whispered against my hair. "I know," I said, holding him just as tightly. "I know." After he left, I stood at the window watching until his taxi disappeared into the swirling snow. Then, I picked up my phone and made a call. "Beatrice, it's Eleanor. I need you to contact Mr. Davies, the caretaker at Stonehaven Manor. Tell him to prepare for guests." I paused, a quiet, strategic smile spreading across my face. "And I think it's time we hosted that famous Christmas party everyone in San Diego is so desperate to attend, don't you?" Victoria called me the next morning, her voice dripping with artificial saccharine sweetness. "Eleanor, what a lovely surprise. Ethan told me he ran into you in New York. Such a coincidence." I held the phone slightly away from my ear, amused by the transparent lie. So Ethan hadn't revealed his Boston visit. Interesting. Did he? I kept my tone neutral. "How nice." "Yes, and we've been talking." A practiced theatrical pause. "We feel terrible about Christmas Eve. There was a genuine misunderstanding. And with the children sick, I was so stressed." The children hadn't been sick. They had been asleep, according to Ethan. I wondered how many falsehoods Victoria had woven over the years, a tapestry of deception so intricate that even she might have lost track of its pattern. "These things happen," I said mildly. "We'd love to make it up to you." Her voice brightened with false enthusiasm. "In fact, we're hosting a small gathering for New Year's Eve. Nothing fancy, just close friends and family. We'd be honored if you join us. Close friends and family." The irony was not lost on me. "That's very kind, Victoria. May I ask what prompted this sudden change of heart?" A slight hesitation. "Ethan and I have been reflecting on family values. The holidays make one sentimental, don't they?" Family values. From the woman who'd called me a stranger to my face. "They certainly do," I agreed, my voice hardening slightly. "Especially when $12 million is involved." The silence that followed was so complete I could hear her breathing change. Faster, shallower. "I'm not sure what you mean." she finally managed, the composure beginning to crack. No? Ethan didn't mention our conversation about his grandfather's trust fund? How curious. Another silence. He mentioned something, but honestly, Eleanor, that has nothing to do with our invitation. We genuinely want to reconnect. Of course you do. I allowed a hint of steel to enter my voice, just as you genuinely intercepted my letters and gifts to my grandchildren for years. What? That's absurd! Ethan, tell her. I heard muffled sounds, a hand clearly covering the phone, urgent whispers. When Victoria returned, her voice had a strained, desperate quality. Eleanor, I think there's been some confusion. Perhaps we should discuss this in person. At our New Year's gathering? I'm afraid I have plans for New Year's Eve, I said, the victory tasting like cool, sweet wine. I'm hosting a party at Stonehaven Manor. The sharp intake of breath was audible, even through the telephone line. Stonehaven Manor? You're attending their party? Not attending, Victoria. I paused, letting the full weight of the statement land. Hosting. I own Stonehaven Manor. The silence stretched for so long, I wondered if the call had dropped. That's not possible, she finally whispered, the voice completely hollowed out. The Stonehaven estate has been owned by the same anonymous investor for decades. Indeed, it has. I agreed pleasantly. Me. I could almost see her mind racing, recalculating every dismissive comment, every condescending smile she'd ever thrown my way. I don't believe you, she said, but uncertainty wavered noticeably in her voice. Your belief isn't required for something to be true, Victoria. The deed is a matter of public record, though it's held by my company rather than my name. Ethan has seen the documentation. Ethan knows about this? Her voice had risen an octave, piercingly sharp. He knows everything now, I said softly. The trust fund, Stonehaven Manor. You're meeting with George Sterling to sabotage his promotion. Your text messages to Julian Marsh. Her gasp was sharp, pained, and purely genuine. How did you... As I said, Ethan knows everything now. The only question remaining is what he chooses to do with that knowledge. You've poisoned him against me, she hissed, the sweet facade crumbling completely into dust. You couldn't stand that he chose me over you, so you fabricated these lies. They would be easier to dismiss if they were lies, wouldn't they? I kept my voice gentle, almost sympathetic. But we both know they aren't. What do you want? The question came out ragged, desperate. Want? I'm not the one who wants something, Victoria. I'm not the one who's been scheming for years to climb a social ladder. I'm not the one who married a man for his potential inheritance. You can't prove that, she said quickly. Too quickly, can I? The prenuptial agreement you refused to sign might suggest otherwise. The sudden, overwhelming interest you took in Ethan after meeting my friend Beatrice at that charity event, where she casually mentioned his family connections. Another shocked silence. I could almost hear the agonizing pieces clicking into place in Victoria's frantic mind. Beatrice Winters? She finally asked. Your friend Beatrice is Beatrice Winters from the Boston Symphony fundraiser? The very same one? The very same. You made quite an impression asking all those leading questions about the Vance family finances immediately after learning Ethan's last name. This is insane. Not spying, Victoria, I corrected calmly. Protecting. There's a difference, though clearly I didn't protect him well enough. The sound that came through the phone was something between a harsh laugh and a pathetic sob. You have no idea who you're dealing with. On the contrary, I said calmly, finally ending the call. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. The question is, do you? I ended the call before she could respond, placing my phone carefully on the table beside me. My hands were steady, my breathing calm, but my heart raced with an emotion I hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Beatrice called an hour later. Victoria's been making frantic inquiries about Stonehaven Manor ownership records, she reported, a hint of excitement in her voice, according to my contact at the county clerk's office. Good, I said. Let her look. The truth is there for anyone willing to see it. Eleanor, Beatrice's voice grew serious. Be careful. Cornered animals are dangerous. So are mothers protecting their children, I reminded her. even when those children are 47 years old. That night, Ethan texted me. Victoria's acting strange, asking questions about Grandpa, about family money. What did you say to her? I replied simply, the truth. Be vigilant. The game has begun. The elaborate invitation arrived at homes across San Diego 3 days later. Cream-colored cardstock with elegant gold embossing. Mrs. Eleanor Vance requests the pleasure of your company for the revival of the Stonehaven Manor Holiday Gala. December 31st, 8:00 p.m. My phone rang minutes after the first invitations were delivered. You're really doing this, Ethan said, sounding both amazed and apprehensive. I believe I am, I replied, checking my list of acceptances. Already 32, including the mayor and 2 state senators. The Stonehaven Manor Gala had once been the social event of the season. Its revival, after 15 years of silence, was causing quite the frenzy. When she came out of her frantic research, she started making calls, dozens of calls to everyone she knows who might have connections to Stonehaven Manor. Ethan was recounting the fallout from my phone call. I smiled to myself, stirring my tea. And what did she learn? That Eleanor Vance, the mysterious widow from Boston who rarely makes public appearances, has owned the property for decades, he admitted, a note of wonder still in his voice. That you're not just wealthy, but deeply connected to half the important families on the East Coast. He paused, his tone growing grim. That I've been, as one of her friends so kindly put it, catastrophically stupid not to have cultivated a better relationship with my own mother. People can be unkind, I murmured, though in this case, their assessment was devastatingly accurate. His voice grew quiet, troubled. Mom, there's something you should know. Victoria's planning something. My pulse quickened immediately. What kind of something? I'm not sure yet. She's been making calls from her burner phone, meeting with someone yesterday. Not Julian Marsh, someone new. And she's been asking strangely detailed questions about the trust fund, about its precise terms. Has she approached you directly? No. She's being unusually nice, attentive, talking about family therapy, about healing our marriage. But I've seen this performance before. It means she's plotting a final, desperate move. I considered this information carefully. The trust documents are ironclad, Ethan. My father, your grandfather, was nothing if not thorough. It's not just the trust I'm worried about, Ethan admitted, his gaze falling to the floor. It's the children. Since I confronted her about the text messages, she's been keeping them especially close, canceling playdates, picking them up early from school. It's almost like she's preparing them for a sudden move. A chill, a deep, primal maternal fear ran through me. You think she might try to leave with them? Leave the country? I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but I've never seen her like this. Cornered, desperate. It scares me. Have you spoken to a lawyer yet? Yesterday. He's preparing divorce papers, but advised me to gather more ironclad evidence before filing. Victoria's family has deep connections in the legal community here, which is why you'll be using my attorneys in Boston, I finished firmly. They're already drawing up custody documents. Forward everything you have, the texts, the financial records, the recordings, to the secure email I sent you. Do not delay, I will. There's one more thing. Victoria's insisting we attend your party together, as a family. This surprised me, even after everything. As a family? She says it's important to keep up appearances, that we can't let rumors start. But I think she wants to confront you, or worse, humiliate you somehow in public. Let her try, I said calmly, taking a slow sip of my tea. Stonehaven Manor has weathered many storms over the centuries. One more social skirmish won't matter. It will only serve to expose her own fragile ego. Mom, be careful. You don't know what she's capable of. But I did know. I'd been watching Victoria's machinations for years. The calculated social climbing, the subtle manipulation, the insidious isolation techniques she'd used on my son. Victoria was dangerous precisely because she presented such a perfect, flawless facade to the world while operating entirely in shadows and whispers. Trust me, Ethan, I said, meeting his worried gaze. I've faced worse adversaries in my life. Adversaries who controlled entire financial markets, not just petty local social scenes. Who even are you? He asked, a note of genuine wonder and confusion in his voice. This confident, strategic woman who owns mansions and outmaneuvers socialites? I'm the same person I've always been, I said softly, the truth resonating with quiet power. The mother who read you bedtime stories and bandaged your scraped knees? The woman who ran your father's company, Vance Acquisitions, after he died? Who sat on boards and made strategic investments while deliberately maintaining the modest life we believed would give you better, more grounded values? Why didn't I see it all those years? Because I didn't want you to, I admitted. Your father and I agreed. You needed to find your own path, not live in our immense shadow. After we hung up, I sat for a long time at my desk, looking at the photograph of my late husband, Robert. His kind, discerning eyes seemed to assess me from across the decades. I'm bringing our boy home, I whispered to his image. Whatever it takes. That evening, Beatrice and I finalized the intricate plans for the gala. Caterers, musicians, rare floral arrangements flown in from Holland. No expense was spared. If this was to be my re-entry into the society I had intentionally shunned for 2 decades, it would be nothing less than utterly spectacular, a display of effortless power. Victoria will try something, Beatrice warned as we reviewed the comprehensive guest list. You know that, right? She won't sit quietly. I'm counting on it, I replied, adding another name to the VIP seating section, Chief Miller, the San Diego police chief. In fact, I'm making it easy for her, Beatrice raised a skeptical eyebrow. Eleanor Vance, are you setting a trap? I prefer to think of it as creating an opportunity, I smiled, a cold, strategic glint in my eye. An opportunity for Victoria to reveal her true self in front of the very society she's so desperately and clumsily trying to impress. My phone chimed with a text from Ethan. Clara asked about you today. Is Grandma really having a princess party in a castle? Victoria was livid. My heart swelled at this first acknowledgement from my granddaughter. Tell her it's not quite a castle, I typed back instantly, but her grandmother would be honored to give her a private tour. Another message appeared moments later. Leo wants to know if there will be cookies. Tears pricked my eyes, the emotional core of this entire ordeal. More cookies than he could possibly eat, I promised. That night, I dreamed of my grandchildren running through the manicured gardens of Stonehaven Manor, their pure laughter echoing off century-old stone walls. In the dream, Ethan watched them from the terrace, smiling, finally free from the poisonous shadow that had darkened his life for so long. I awoke with a fierce, renewed determination. The chessboard was perfectly set. Victoria had made her career isolating and controlling my son. Now she would learn what happens when a mother, a Vance, finally says, enough. I returned to San Diego 5 days before the gala, settling into Stonehaven Manor with Beatrice by my side. The massive mansion awakened around us. Chandeliers polished to brilliance, hardwood floors buffed to a mirror shine, gardens sculpted to absolute perfection despite the December chill. Standing in the grand foyer, watching Mr. Davies and the staff transform the space with intricate garlands and rare white roses, I felt a strange sense of homecoming. This house had been an investment, a precious memory, a carefully guarded secret, but never truly a home. Now, perhaps, it could finally become one. Mrs. Vance, the house manager, Mr. Davies, approached with a silver tray, his expression impeccably professional. There's been a delivery for you. On the tray sat a small, perfectly wrapped box tied with an expensive silk ribbon. The card read simply, a peace offering. Victoria Beatrice eyed it suspiciously. Don't open it, Eleanor. It's a blatant power play. I carefully untied the ribbon anyway, the curiosity and intellectual challenge too great to ignore. Inside the box nestled a delicate crystal ornament, a perfect miniature of Stonehaven Manor itself, expertly crafted by a famous European artist. Well, Beatrice conceded, examining the intricate piece. You have to admire the sheer audacity of the woman. A beautiful, expensive reminder that she knows where I live, I noted. Placing the ornament on the mantelpiece, its icy brilliance catching the light. How considerate of her. My phone rang. Ethan. "Victoria just told me she sent you a gift," he said, his voice tense and worried. "What was it?" I described the ornament. He exhaled sharply. "Mom, she spent $3,000 on that. A custom-made, rush-ordered piece from some famous crystal artist in Venice." "A rather expensive threat," I remarked. "There's more, isn't there? She's been meeting with her father's attorney all week, a high-powered shark named Sterling's cousin. And she asked me to sign papers for a massive home equity loan yesterday. Said it was for renovations. When I refused, she didn't even argue or push the matter. Because she has a much bigger, much more desperate plan," I concluded. "Has she mentioned the children attending the gala?" "She's already bought them custom-made outfits. Says it's absolutely vital they meet their grandmother properly at such a prestigious event." A chill ran through me, settling deep in my bones. "Ethan, I want you to do something right now. Check the children's passports." "Their passports? Why would—" He stopped abruptly, the realization dawning with sickening clarity. "You think she's planning to leave the country with them? You think she's going to flee? It's precisely what I would consider in her position. Facing total public exposure, imminent divorce, and potential financial ruin." The line went silent as Ethan presumably went to search for the crucial documents. When he returned, his breathing was rapid, shallow, controlled panic. "They're gone. Both passports plus their birth certificates. And some of their favorite clothes are missing. Not enough for a full wardrobe, but favorite essential comfort items." My mind raced, constructing the scenario. "When is she planning to attend the gala?" "We're supposed to arrive at 8 o'clock with everyone else. She's been talking about making a grand synchronized entrance." "And the children?" "She insists they come with us. Says it's a family occasion that must be photographed." I exchanged a grim glance with Beatrice, who nodded slowly. "Ethan, listen carefully. Victoria isn't planning to stay at the gala. She's going to use it as cover, drop in briefly to establish her presence, then slip away with the children while everyone is distracted by the spectacle." "How can you be so certain?" His voice cracked slightly. "Because it's elegant and brutally effective," I said simply. "Everyone who matters in San Diego will be here. If she disappears afterward, people will assume she's still at the party for hours. By the time anyone realizes they are truly gone, she and the children could be halfway to Vancouver or a private jet in Mexico. What do we do? What is the counter-move?" His voice was filled with the controlled panic of a man whose worst fears were confirming themselves in real time. "First, you say absolutely nothing to Victoria. Act completely normal, maybe even a little overly solicitous. Second, call your attorney immediately and alert him to the missing passports and documents. Third," I paused, considering the risk and the emotional leverage required, "bring the children to me today." "What? How? Tell Victoria what?" "Tell Victoria you're taking them to buy her a surprise gift for the party. Bring them here instead. She'll never agree to let me take them alone. She hasn't let them out of her sight for days." I closed my eyes, thinking furiously. "Then suggest a family outing somewhere public. The children have never met me, so she won't suspect a thing if you suggest bringing them to the beach this afternoon, and you'll just happen to be there." "Precisely. A chance encounter with their long-lost, suddenly wealthy grandmother. Once we've met, it will be much harder for her to keep them physically from me." Ethan was quiet for a moment, processing the high-stakes deception. "La Jolla Cove, 3 o'clock. There's a playground on the north end. I'll be there," he promised, his voice now firm with a renewed, urgent resolve. After we hung up, Beatrice looked at me skeptically. "You really think Victoria will fall for this flimsy cover story?" "She's desperate and overconfident, a dangerous combination that often leads to spectacular, critical errors in judgment," I explained. "Besides, she still doesn't know exactly what Ethan knows. She's operating on fatally incomplete information, and if she refuses to let him take the children—" I picked up my phone again, my decision already made. "Mr. Davies, please connect me with Chief Miller." At exactly 3 o'clock, I spotted them. Ethan walking stiffly, a picture of false normalcy. Victoria, elegant and predatory in designer casual wear. And between them, two small precious figures, my grandchildren. My heart nearly stopped in my chest. Clara was tall for 7, with Ethan's dark, thoughtful hair and earnest expression. Leo was all pure, boundless energy, immediately breaking away from his parents to race toward the bright yellow slide. They were more beautiful, more real than any photograph could possibly capture. I remained seated, breathing deeply, waiting for Ethan to execute the plan. He led them on a meandering path that gradually, inexorably approached my bench. Victoria seemed distracted, checking her burner phone frequently, her posture tense with internal scheming. When they were within 10 feet, Ethan stopped abruptly, pulling off a performance worthy of a Tony Award. "Mom! Mom, is that really you?" I stood, arranging my features into a perfect mask of surprised delight. "Ethan, what a wonderful, impossible coincidence. What are you doing here?" Victoria's head snapped up, her perfectly applied eyebrows furrowing as she registered my presence. Her eyes narrowed instantly. Ethan moved forward, embracing me warmly, a performance that felt startlingly, desperately genuine to both of us. "Children," he said, turning to Clara and Leo, "this is your grandmother." "My mother." Clara studied me with solemn, intelligent eyes, taking my measure. Leo simply asked, "Are you having cookies at your castle party?" I laughed, a genuine, warm, grandmotherly sound. "More cookies than you can possibly eat, young man." "Eleanor," Victoria interrupted, her voice tight, the surprise quickly replaced by suspicion. "What an absolute surprise to find you here. Are you spying on us?" "I've always loved this beach, Victoria," I said pleasantly, dismissing the accusation. "Would you mind if I joined you for a little while? I've waited so long to finally meet my grandchildren." Before Victoria could formulate a coherent objection, Clara stepped forward, her curiosity overriding her mother's tension. "Do you really live in a castle?" "It's a very old house," I corrected gently, kneeling down to her level, "with a beautiful, rambling garden where children used to play many years ago." "Your father, in fact. Can we see it?" Leo asked eagerly, his blue eyes wide. Victoria's smile was brittle, stretched too thin. "Perhaps after the party, sweetheart. We should let grandmother get back to her important preparations." "Actually," Ethan interjected smoothly, placing a hand on Victoria's shoulder, "I think a quick tour today would be absolutely wonderful. The children have been so excited since they heard about it. And darling, think of the social capital. Being the first to see the new Stonehaven setup. It's perfect." I watched the cold calculation in Victoria's eyes, weighing the immense risk of refusing against the overwhelming, irresistible opportunity to see the inside of Stonehaven Manor before the gala. Curiosity, vanity, and greed won the internal battle. "Well," she said, managing a controlled, sharp exhale, "if Eleanor doesn't mind, I suppose I would be delighted to see the interiors." "Family is always welcome at Stonehaven Manor," I replied, meeting her gaze steadily, allowing no crack in my facade. As we walked toward the parking lot, Clara slipped her small hand into mine. "Dad says you have stories about when he was little," she whispered, her voice full of hope. "So many stories," I promised, squeezing her fingers gently. "I've waited a very long time to tell them all to you." Victoria watched this exchange with a carefully neutral expression, but I caught the flash of something dangerous in her eyes. She was recalculating, adapting her strategy. Let her, I thought. The game was changing rapidly, but the essential advantage was now mine. My grandchildren were no longer just names and photos. They were real, warm, curious little people who deserved protection from whatever final act their mother was planning, and I would protect them, whatever the agonizing cost. If this family drama has you on the edge of your seat, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Will Victoria's escape plan be thwarted? What will happen when the children see Stonehaven Manor for the first time? Subscribe now to make sure you don't miss the next chapter of this riveting story. Stonehaven Manor revealed itself in all its formidable glory as we rounded the final curve of the tree-lined drive. 3 stories of golden, imposing limestone glowing in the afternoon sun, windows like watchful, judging eyes, gardens stretching toward the cliff's edge where the Pacific Ocean churned relentlessly below. Wow. Clara breathed beside me in the back seat. It really is a castle, Grandma. Leo bounced in his seat, his eyes wide with wonder. Does it have secret passages? I smiled, remembering Ethan asking me the exact same question decades ago during his only childhood visit to this estate. A few, I admitted. This house has been standing for almost 100 years. It holds many secrets. Victoria's eyes, however, darted everywhere, absorbing details, assessing value, calculating its worth in both dollars and social cachet. The predatory focus in her gaze was utterly unmistakable. Ethan parked in the circular drive, and Mr. Davies appeared immediately to greet us, his professional demeanor betraying no hint of surprise at our unexpected, chaotic arrival. "Welcome to Stonehaven Manor," he said, bowing slightly. "Refreshments have been prepared in the garden room." Victoria's eyebrows rose fractionally at this evidence of a well-oiled, perfectly orchestrated household. She'd clearly expected something less established, less powerful. As we entered the grand foyer, Leo gasped at the sweeping staircase. Clara stared upward at the domed ceiling with its hand-painted constellations. Even Victoria couldn't entirely conceal her awe. "It's even more magnificent than people say," she murmured, trailing her fingers along a marble-side table, instantly assessing the antique value. "It's been in my late husband's family for generations," I explained, watching her reaction carefully. "Though it's changed hands occasionally, it always seems to find its way back to us." "How fortunate," Victoria replied, her smile not reaching her cold eyes. I led them through the main floor, the formal dining room with its table permanently set for 30 guests, the library with precious first editions locked behind glass, the music room where a magnificent grand piano gleamed under spotlights. Throughout the tour, Ethan watched his children's unrestrained wonder with a pure joy I hadn't seen on his face in years. Victoria, however, watched me, calculating, reassessing, searching for a weakness. In the garden room, a light afternoon tea awaited. Mr. Davies had thoughtfully included cookies shaped like stars and moons, perfect for children. As the children settled with their treats, Ethan drew me discreetly aside. "You've lived here all this time? Whenever you visited San Diego?" "No," I admitted quietly. "I could never bring myself to stay here after your father died. It reminded me too much of what we'd planned together. The house has been maintained, occasionally rented for exclusive private events, but mostly, it stood tragically empty." "All these years," he murmured, the bitterness in his voice palpable, while Victoria and I lived in our house that she constantly complained was too small, too ordinary. "Your father and I wanted you to build your own life, Ethan," I reminded him, "not inherit ours ready-made." "And I married someone who only wanted what was ready-made," he finished, the profound sadness in his voice almost too much to bear. Victoria approached, her smile brittle, forced. "Such a lovely home, Eleanor. The children are absolutely enchanted." "I'm glad," I replied warmly. "I hope they'll visit often." "Of course," she said smoothly. "Family is so incredibly important. Which reminds me, Ethan, didn't you want to show the children the gardens while I have a quick moment with your mother? I'd love to discuss the gala seating arrangement." Ethan hesitated, glancing between us, knowing the significance of this request. "An excellent idea," I encouraged. "The rose garden is particularly beautiful. Even in December, Mr. Davies can show you the winding path." After Ethan and the children, accompanied by Mr. Davies, departed, Victoria's facade dissolved like sugar in boiling water. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her voice low, intense, and filled with venomous malice. "Having tea with my family," I replied calmly, taking a slow, deliberate sip. "Is that a problem for your plans?" "You know exactly what you're doing." "This house, the gala, appearing at the beach today. It's all calculated to undermine me." I set down my cup with an elegant click. "How utterly insecure you must be, Victoria, to see a grandmother finally meeting her grandchildren as some form of orchestrated attack." Don't play the innocent martyr with me, Eleanor. I've done my own research on you now. Eleanor Vance, Boston society maven, silent partner in multiple corporations, friend to senators and judges. You're trying to take my family apart, piece by piece. Your family? I countered, the steel returning to my voice. The family you've isolated from me for years? The husband whose career you've secretly sabotaged? The children you're planning to take out of the country without their father's consent or knowledge? Her face blanched completely white. What are you talking about? That's insane. The missing passports, Victoria. The carefully packed favorite toys. The sudden desperate interest in home equity loans. Did you genuinely think Ethan wouldn't notice? Did you think I wouldn't? She recovered quickly, forcing a harsh laugh. That's absurd. I would never, wouldn't you? When faced with losing everything, the social position, the financial security, the total control you crave. You have no proof of anything, she hissed, utterly cornered. Actually, I smiled placidly, I do. The beauty of wealth, Victoria, is that it buys excellent, discreet security and intelligence services. I have records of your meetings with Julian Marsh, your visits to private banking institutions, the offshore account you've been aggressively establishing in the Cayman Islands. This was a calculated, high-risk bluff regarding the specific details, but from the flash of pure, unadulterated panic in her eyes, I knew it had struck home. Whatever Ethan has told you is distorted, she insisted, weaving a rapid lie. We've had problems, yes, but all marriages do. He's confused, possibly even having some kind of nervous breakdown. His work has been so incredibly stressful. The work you prevented him from advancing in, I interjected, my eyes never leaving hers, or the work where his mother is actually on the board. Victoria went very still, her composure completely shattered. You're lying, am I? Ask Ethan about the board meeting last spring. The one where your name came up specifically as a potential liability to his future advancement. Her composure evaporated completely. The moment you called his mother a stranger at Christmas, Victoria, you sealed your own fate. She leaned forward, voice dropping to a low, venomous whisper. You think you've won? You have no idea what depths of cruelty I'm capable of when my back is truly against the wall. On the contrary, I replied evenly, standing up slowly, towering over her. I know exactly what you are capable of. That's precisely why Chief Miller has been alerted about the missing passports. That's why the Border Patrol has the children's names flagged in their system. That's why your father's attorney received a very interesting, detailed package of documents this morning detailing your extramarital activities and financial malfeasance. Her face drained of all color, turning a ghastly, translucent white. You wouldn't dare expose me publicly? I already have, I said simply, the finality in my voice chilling. The question is, what will you do now? Continue with a plan that's already compromised, or find a way to salvage what little remains of your dignity, your reputation, and your future. Before she could form a desperate, pathetic answer, the glass garden doors burst open, and Leo ran in, his face alight with pure, childish excitement. Grandma! Dad says there's a huge treehouse in the big oak. Can Clara and I see it now? I turned to him with genuine, unfeigned warmth, instantly switching modes. Of course, sweetheart. It was your father's favorite place in the world when he was your age. Go find Mr. Davies and he will show you the secret steps. Victoria watched, speechless and defeated, as I took Leo's small hand and led him back outside. In the garden, Clara was examining a perfectly formed white rose while Ethan pointed out different varieties. The scene was so perfectly ordinary, so completely what I had dreamed of for years, that my heart ached with the fullness of it. You okay, Mom? Ethan asked quietly, coming to stand beside me, his eyes full of concern. Never better, dear, I assured him, though I could feel Victoria's furious, defeated eyes boring into my back from the window. But we need to be vigilant. The storm hasn't completely passed yet. Ethan nodded imperceptibly, understanding the command. Then he clapped his hands together, his voice bright for the children. Who wants to see the secret passage that leads down to the beach cove? It's not just a party, kids, it's an adventure. As the children cheered, I cast one final glance back at Victoria, still watching from the garden room window. Her expression had changed from blinding fury to something far colder, far more dangerous. Calculation. The game wasn't quite over. It had barely entered its most critical stage. On the eve of the gala, Stonehaven Manor hummed with intricate, organized activity. Florists arranging mountains of white roses and shimmering silver eucalyptus, caterers preparing rare delicacies, staff polishing every surface until the entire mansion gleamed with quiet power. I stood at the window of the master suite, watching the sun set over the Pacific, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. My phone chimed with a text from Ethan. Victoria hasn't come home. Told the children she had important errands this morning. No contact since she left Stonehaven. Her phone is off. My stomach tightened with a familiar, deep professional dread. In the 3 days since our confrontation at Stonehaven Manor, Victoria had been unnervingly quiet. No more gifts, no more threats. She'd gone through the motions of daily life while radiating a cold, palpable fury that Ethan said had made the house feel like it was filled with static electricity. Are the children with you? I typed back immediately. Yes, Clara's reading. Leo's building a fort with every pillow in the house. Bring them here tonight, I decided suddenly, without hesitation. Stay until the gala is over. Mr. Davies has prepared the guest wing. His response came quickly, filled with relief. Already packed their bags. Victoria wouldn't know. We'll be there in under an hour. I set the phone down, a mixture of profound relief and apprehension washing over me. Having Ethan and the children safely at Stonehaven Manor eased one crippling concern, but Victoria's sudden, complete disappearance raised another, more dangerous one. She wasn't the type to simply vanish, to surrender her control without a spectacular, devastating fight. Whatever she was planning, it would be calculated for maximum, inescapable impact. Beatrice appeared in the doorway, elegant in a silk robe, her silver hair freshly styled for tomorrow. Ethan is bringing the children. Victoria has gone completely missing. Beatrice's expression hardened instantly. I've already spoken with security. The guest list has been verified 3 times. No one enters tomorrow without proper, verified identification. We are running a tight ship. She'll find a way, Beatrice, I said quietly, walking toward the window. She's cornered, desperate, and believes she has absolutely nothing left to lose. She has her children to lose, Beatrice pointed out firmly. I'm not sure she sees them that way anymore. To her, they are simply leverage, valuable assets to be controlled. Did Mr. Davies secure the East Wing? Yes. The children's rooms have the best security features in the entire house, and Chief Miller's wife mentioned he'll be arriving early to personally check security protocols, she said. Apparently, he mentioned concerns about an unwelcome individual attempting a disruption. I smiled faintly. Barbara Miller always did understand the absolute necessity of discretion. An hour later, headlights swept up the long, winding drive. I hurried downstairs to find Ethan ushering 2 pajama-clad children through the grand entrance. Clara clutched a thick book to her chest. Leo dragged a stuffed dinosaur by one worn leg. Grandma! Leo spotted me first, running across the cold marble floor to crash into my legs. Dad says we're having a sleepover before the party. Is this really our room? I wrapped my arms around him, savoring the warmth and solidity of his small, trusting body. That's right, sweetheart. I have special rooms prepared just for you 2. Clara approached more cautiously, studying my face with those solemn, thoughtful eyes, so like her father's. Is Mom coming too? Ethan and I exchanged a loaded glance over her head. Mom has some very important things to take care of before the party, he explained gently, kneeling down to her level. She'll meet us here tomorrow. Clara nodded, accepting this with the weary resignation of a child already accustomed to unexplained changes and disappointment. My heart ached for the years of emotional damage Victoria had inflicted. Would you like to see your room? I asked, holding out my hand. It has a window seat where you can read and watch the ocean, high above the rocks. Her face brightened slightly. Really? A whole window just for reading? As Mr. Davies showed the children to their luxurious rooms, Ethan pulled me aside, his expression grim and defeated. She emptied our joint account, he said without preamble. Every single penny. And she's been making persistent calls to her cousin in Vancouver, Canada. Smart, I murmured, my mind racing. Less immediate scrutiny than a direct international flight to a less connected location. I think she's still planning to take them, Ethan said, running a tired hand through his hair. Maybe not immediately, but soon. This disappearing act is just to throw us completely off guard. The children are safe here, Ethan, I assured him, resting a comforting hand on his arm. And by tomorrow evening, everyone who matters in San Diego will know exactly who Victoria Reynolds truly is. That is the ultimate defense. Ethan looked troubled, the internal conflict still visible on his face. Is public humiliation necessary? For the children's sake? This isn't about mere humiliation, Ethan. It's about definitive, unassailable protection. Once the truth is known, the affairs, the financial manipulation, the blatant sabotage of your career, Victoria loses her power, her social standing, her reputation, her ability to manipulate the narrative, all gone. And without that, she has nothing left to fight with. And the trust fund? Stonehaven Manor? Are those just leverages too? I studied my son's face, seeing the painful conflict there. Despite everything, some deeply compassionate part of him still cared for the woman he'd married, still desperately hoped for a resolution that wouldn't utterly destroy her. The trust fund is yours regardless, I said gently. It always has been, provided you demonstrate sound judgment, which you are doing now. As for Stonehaven Manor, I've already begun the official transfer of ownership to you and the children. It was always meant to be your family home, Ethan. Your father would have wanted this years ago. He swallowed hard, blinking back sudden tears. Thank you. Doesn't seem adequate for all you've done. It never is between family, dear, I replied, squeezing his hand. Now, shall we see if the children have discovered the secret passage to the library yet? Leo strikes me as a boy who finds hidden doors very quickly. Late that night, after the children were finally asleep, Leo having required 3 bedtime stories, and Clara extracting a solemn promise that she could help greet guests tomorrow, Ethan and I sat in the vast, quiet library, firelight casting long, dancing shadows across the leather-bound volumes. What do you think she'll do? He asked, staring intently into his amber whiskey. Come to the gala, I said with cold certainty. It's far too important to her image, her final desperate stand to miss it. She'll arrive, play the part of the devoted, wronged wife and mother, perhaps even attempt some grand, theatrical reconciliatory gesture for public consumption, and then we reveal what we know, Ethan finished, his voice now steady and resolute. Precisely. The affairs, the financial manipulation, the sabotage of your career. Not to embarrass her, Ethan, but to ensure she can't twist the narrative afterward. We eliminate her credibility entirely. The recordings, the documents. Chief Miller will have copies, as will your attorney, merely as essential protection. She'll fight the divorce, he predicted. Contest custody. Drag it out for years. She might try, I agreed, swirling the ice in my glass. But with what resources? Her family's influence has definitive limits, especially against what the full resources of Vance Acquisitions and Sterling Partners can bring to bear. The battle will be short and decisive. A comfortable, easy silence fell between us, broken only by the crackling fire. For the first time in years, I felt the deep, natural companionship that had once been the simple, steady backdrop of our lives. I've missed you, Ethan said suddenly, quietly. Even before Victoria, after Dad died, you changed. You became more distant, more focused on the business. I never truly understood why you pulled back. The observation caught me by surprise, hitting a deep old wound. I had to be strong, I said after a moment, the explanation difficult to articulate. For both of us, the company was struggling in the aftermath. There were people who thought a widow couldn't possibly handle it. I couldn't afford to show any weakness, any emotion. And then I married Victoria, and you lost me too, he finished sadly. I never lost you, I corrected softly. I just couldn't reach you for a while. But I never stopped watching over you. His phone buzzed softly on the table between us. He glanced at it, his expression darkening instantly. "Victoria?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. He nodded, showing me the screen. "Everything's ready for tomorrow. Tell your mother I'm looking forward to finally celebrating as a family. We will finally be complete." "She's planning something spectacular," he said unnecessarily, dread mixed with a strange resignation. "Of course she is." I rose, straightening my shoulders, readying myself for the final act. "And so, my dear son, are we." As I climbed the magnificent staircase to my room later, I paused at the children's doors, listening to their soft, trusting breathing. These precious grandchildren I'd only just found. Whatever Victoria was planning, she would not, under any circumstance, take them from us again. Of that, I was absolutely certain. The Stonehaven Manor Gala, a simple social event to most, a devastating battlefield to two weary souls, was now less than 24 hours away. The night of the Stonehaven Manor Gala arrived in a blaze of cold, glittering brilliance. Hundreds of cars, sleek and expensive, wound up the long, floodlit drive. The air was thick with the scent of white roses, expensive perfume, and the low, simmering anticipation of high society. I stood in the grand receiving line in a simple, striking black gown flanked by Ethan and Beatrice. Ethan, dressed in a sharp tuxedo, looked like the powerful man he was meant to be, his eyes clear and his posture resolute. The children, Clara and Leo, had been safely tucked into their secure wing hours ago, blissfully unaware of the social war about to commence. Chief Miller and his wife, Barbara, were among the first arrivals. "Everything is quiet, Eleanor," the chief whispered discreetly during the handshake, his eyes scanning the crowd. "We have plainclothes officers mingling and the perimeter is secure. She won't get past the gate." "She won't come through the gate, Chief," I corrected, my gaze fixed on the magnificent ballroom. "She'll come through the roof, or via a media blitz, or by simply walking in with a guest. She is nothing if not utterly theatrical." The entire San Diego elite flowed into the foyer. The politicians, the real estate magnates, the social doyens, all eager to see the revival of the famed Stonehaven Gala and, perhaps more importantly, eager to meet the legendary Eleanor Vance and assess her assets. At 9 o'clock, the orchestra began the first waltz. The ballroom, glittering under the massive crystal chandeliers, was a spectacle of wealth and influence. Suddenly, a noticeable hush fell over the room. All heads turned toward the main entrance. Victoria had arrived. She was not with Ethan. She walked in alone, dressed in a breathtaking, custom-made scarlet gown, a stark, aggressive contrast to the white and silver elegance of the room. She was accompanied by a middle-aged, impeccably tailored man who I instantly recognized as Marcus Sterling, George Sterling's estranged, ambitious brother, a man known for his willingness to take on any case for the right price and cause maximum, messy public disruption. A notorious divorce attorney, her entrance was a masterstroke of defiant theater. She paused at the threshold, holding the crowd's attention, before sweeping gracefully toward the center of the room, her expression radiating serene, wronged confidence. "There she is," Ethan murmured, his jaw tight. "The final act." "Stay calm, dear," I advised, my voice steady. "She's playing for the cameras in the back. Let her come to us. We wait for her move." Victoria and Marcus Sterling navigated the room with practiced ease, exchanging smiles and air kisses with the powerful guests. She was building an audience. Finally, she reached our small group. "Eleanor," Victoria said, her voice carrying just enough to turn nearby heads, a perfect tone of measured sorrow. "Thank you for finally hosting. It's a beautiful house. I only wish we could celebrate as a true reconciled family." Marcus Sterling stepped forward, his smile sharp and predatory. "Mrs. Vance, Marcus Sterling representing Victoria Reynolds. I understand there have been some difficult family discussions regarding the trust fund and certain properties. We are here tonight to discuss a more amicable, private resolution before matters become unfortunate." He was attempting to signal to the entire room that Victoria was the reasonable one, trying to protect her reputation from a crazy, jealous mother-in-law. I met his gaze, completely unfazed. Mr. Sterling, I'm afraid the time for amicable private resolution has passed. My resolution is already public, as are the trust fund terms. My attorneys are prepared to proceed as planned on the 26th. Victoria seized the moment, her eyes welling up with perfectly executed controlled tears. "Don't do this, Eleanor," she pleaded, her voice cracking slightly. "I know you're hurt. I know Ethan has been feeding you lies about my motives, but I have been a loving, devoted mother to Clara and Leo for 7 years. Don't you dare try to take my children from me based on these cruel fabrications." This was her final play, painting me as the emotional aggressor, the vengeful widow using her wealth to steal her grandchildren. A few guests shifted uncomfortably, some murmurs started. Victoria was winning the sympathy vote. Ethan stepped forward, his face a mask of cold, hard disappointment, a look that cut deeper than any anger. "Don't insult my mother's intelligence, Victoria. The time for lies is over. We know you intercepted the mail. We know about Julian Marsh." Victoria instantly spun to face the nearest camera crew. "He's having a breakdown. A mental health crisis brought on by his mother's sudden, devastating financial threats. He is not thinking clearly?" I gave Ethan a subtle nod. The time for subtlety was over. "Victoria," I said, my voice cutting through the rising noise, calm and authoritative, instantly silencing the room. "You are quite right. We should all know the real truth." I took a remote from Mr. Davies, who had discreetly positioned himself near the main sound booth. I aimed the remote at the massive, retractable projection screen hidden above the orchestra. "If you truly wish to discuss Ethan's emotional stability, perhaps we should let the Sterling Partners board discuss it first." I pressed the button. The screen descended and the orchestra music cut out abruptly. On the screen, a date appeared, April 12th last year. Then, the audio began, the unmistakable. High-stakes conversation between Victoria and George Sterling in a private room. The audio recording of Victoria and George Sterling boomed through the high-fidelity speakers of the Stonehaven Manor ballroom, instantly killing all the social noise and chatter. Victoria's voice. "And so, George, I am advising the board against Ethan's promotion. His emotional stability is questionable, and honestly, he lacks the killer instinct required for a managing partner. His wife's family also lacks the necessary capital connections, if you understand me." George Sterling's voice. "I understand perfectly, Victoria. And if he doesn't get the promotion, he remains dependent on your family's support for now. A temporary setback for him, a long-term win for your agenda." "Very clever!" A collective gasp swept through the crowd. George Sterling, the founder's partner, was implicated in a nepotistic, calculated sabotage plot. Victoria was revealed as the vicious architect. "No!" Victoria screamed, her composure finally shattering completely, transforming the beautiful woman into a desperate, hateful shrew. "That's edited." "It's a cruel, pathetic lie!" I pressed the remote again. The screen instantly switched to the next piece of evidence. High-resolution surveillance images of Victoria meeting Julian Marsh, the alleged affair partner, in a series of discreet, expensive locations. The date and timestamp were damningly visible beneath each photo. And now, "My dear guests," I announced, my voice clear and resonating with truth, "let's discuss the missing passports of Clara and Leo." Chief Miller and 2 of his plainclothes officers moved swiftly and professionally, positioning themselves near Victoria and Marcus Sterling. "I have transferred the full $12 million trust fund to Ethan's uncontested custody. Furthermore, I have today finalized the transfer of Stonehaven Manor to a trust established for Ethan and his children. Victoria has lost all leverage, all credibility, and all assets in this relationship." I looked directly at Victoria, who was trembling, her scarlet dress now seeming like a costume for a public execution. "Your plane ticket to Vancouver has been canceled. The authorities have been notified. The game is over, Victoria." Marcus Sterling immediately put a protective, defensive hand on his client's arm. "We are leaving, Mrs. Reynolds. We will fight this in court, where evidence is properly authenticated." "You are free to leave, Mr. Sterling," I said, stepping aside. "But I assure you, you will lose. The truth, as I said, only asks to be seen. The moment Victoria realized she was truly defeated, truly exposed, something terrible happened. She lunged forward with a piercing scream, aiming her expensive champagne glass directly at my face, a final, desperate act of violence. Before the glass could connect, Ethan moved with the decisive speed of a man reclaiming his dignity. He grabbed Victoria's arm, holding her firmly back as the chief and his officers quickly and quietly escorted her and Marcus Sterling out the nearest service door. She was gone in a blur of scarlet and rage, leaving only silence and the faint smell of expensive perfume. The room remained hushed, the entire San Diego social hierarchy stunned into immobility. I walked to the center of the ballroom, picked up the discarded remote, and addressed the shaken crowd. My sincere apologies for the interruption. The Stonehaven Manor Gala is not just a party. It is a statement that truth, integrity, and family will always prevail over greed and deception. The music will resume. Please enjoy the rest of the evening. I nodded to the orchestra conductor, who immediately launched into a bright, cheerful waltz. The crisis was over. The social order was reset. Later, as the party continued around us, Ethan and I stood on the grand terrace, watching the ocean below. "You didn't have to do all that, Mom," he said quietly, his eyes full of both exhaustion and profound gratitude. "You could have just given me the money." "But then you wouldn't have your life back, Ethan," I said, resting my head against his shoulder. "You wouldn't have the clarity you earned tonight, and Clara and Leo wouldn't have the safe, honest home they deserve." He turned and pulled me into a long, tear-jerking embrace, the kind of honest, unconditional hug that only a son can give his mother. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mom. Thank you for never truly leaving." "I told you," I whispered, holding him tight, tears finally stinging my eyes. "I never lost you. I just couldn't reach you for a while." In the distance, I saw Beatrice raise her glass in a silent toast. The battle was won. The family was finally truly home at Stonehaven Manor. If Eleanor Vance's powerful story of strategic redemption, familial love, and the ultimate victory of truth over treachery captivated you, you won't want to miss the next chapter of the Stonehaven legacy. Subscribe now to follow Clara and Leo's adventures as they discover the secrets of their new castle, Stonehaven Manor, and see how Ethan rebuilds his life and career as a partner at Sterling Ventures. Drop a comment below and tell us which revelation shocked you the most: the $12 million trust fund, Eleanor's ownership of Stonehaven, or the moment Victoria's plot was exposed in front of the entire elite of San Diego.